Welcome to the Nillumbik Shire Council Consultation Committee meeting, today August the 11th. Members of the public are advised the meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the live stream recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. The Nillumbik Shire Council respectfully acknowledges and recognises the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung as the traditional owner of the land on which Nillumbik is located. We pay tribute to all First Peoples living in the Nillumbik Shire, give respect to Elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to all First Peoples. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. As all councillors are present for the meeting, there will be no apologies. On to item 4. Are there any councillors who wish to disclose a conflict of interest this evening? No, thank you. For the previous minutes, not sure on the date of that. Oh, yep, Tuesday the 14th of July. Can I have a mover, please, to confirm or to move? Sorry, thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Thank you. I move that the committee acting under delegation for council confirms the minutes of the Planning and Consultation Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 14th of July 2026 as per attachment 1.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Joyner. Would you like to speak, Councillor Perkins? Councillor Joyner, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We will move on to officers' reports. So thank you very much to all the submitters for attending tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to share your views with Council. As you come up to make your submission, please know you will have 3 minutes to address the Council, so please keep your eye on the timer. And the item for tonight is the Nillumbik Tree Protection and Management Policy, and we have 3 registered people to speak to this item. And first, I would like to welcome Vicky Shakuroglu on behalf of Nillumbik. Just pop your microphone on, sorry, just the button.
That one? Great. Thanks, everybody. It's a great opportunity to speak on the draft Nillumbik Tree Protection and Management Policy. We strongly support Council developing a comprehensive policy and commend it on a good start. But if this policy is to genuinely protect Nillumbik's trees, it needs a fundamental shift in emphasis. As a foundation, we must remember that language does not simply reflect our values, it helps shape them. The way we describe something influences how we perceive its importance, what we believe is acceptable, and ultimately how we treat it. There have been many times in our history when language that was once considered acceptable came to be recognised as reflecting values we had outgrown. We will eventually look back at some of the language we currently use about mature trees, describing them primarily in terms of hazards, clearance, maintenance costs or removal, and wonder why we accepted such a narrow view of something so valuable. Council has an opportunity to lead that change in language, in policy and in action. Our written submission outlines various areas of the draft that need attention, and we look forward to Council's considered response. Mature Indigenous trees must be treated as multifaceted assets to be protected, not problems to be managed. The words used in this policy should reflect the understanding we now have of mature Indigenous trees, that they are ecological assets, critical habitat, part of climate resilience, fundamental to human health, and part of Nillumbik's natural heritage. Planting a replacement tree does not replace those functions in any meaningful timeframe. The policy should establish a clear principle: retention is the starting point, not removal. Every alternative to removal should be genuinely investigated and documented. The onus is on the person or organisation to prove that all options have been exhausted. This is particularly important because risk assessment contains professional judgment. The assessment framework is inherently subjective. Transparency in decision-making processes is essential. The community has a legitimate interest in such decisions. People should be able to know which trees are proposed for removal, why removal is considered necessary, what alternatives were examined, what ecological assessment was undertaken, and who made the final decision. Council should establish clear notification and reporting processes, including notification of relevant friends groups, environmental organisations, and others. Decisions should be visible, accountable, and open to scrutiny. Council's own actions send a powerful message. This policy should not simply manage the loss of trees. It should actively prevent unnecessary loss.
Thank you so much, Vicky.
Thanks.
Just stay there for a minute. Does anyone have a question for Vicky on behalf of Nillumbik? No? Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Peter? Councillor Perkins?
Yeah, thanks for your submission, Vicky. It's very good. So would you recommend like a whole-scale rework of the policy or perhaps something at the start that really hones into those points that you're would that suffice in the first instance? Like, this is the first time we've had a policy of this nature. Like, if there was a preface that really honed in on some of the things that you just spoke to, which I think we would all agree with.
Yeah, I think if this is a policy that council can stand really boldly and say this is how we look at trees, how we respect trees, what we value in our trees, I would say the language throughout the policy needs to shift. You know, I think about how language was used to describe people in the past and how we have moved and how our perceptions have changed concurrently. And so if we are genuinely to be, why not the world's most amazing place in protection of trees, why shouldn't we hold that standard? Does that policy really achieve that? Is the language enforcing the kinds of protections that will ensure that trees are valued? I would suggest perhaps it could be significantly improved. Thank you.
Sorry, a follow-up question from Councillor Brooker.
Look, I'd like to just make an observation and then get your response to it. I think that's where I'm going with the question. But look, I occasionally have residents talk to me, and generally the conversations go along like this. We love trees. You know, trees are, you know, the best things in our lives, except for this tree. And it is this tree that is causing a safety hazard, a maintenance hazard, and something like that. So we've got a policy here that's seeking to protect trees. You're saying maybe world standards of protecting trees. Where does the kind of common interest lie in trying to kind of ameliorate the concerns of those people about trees and our desire to retain trees?
Yeah, I guess if you don't like trees that much, don't live in Nillumbik, would be a really basic standard. Mm-hmm. And if we want to proceed sort of upholding this notion that Nillumbik is the Green Wedge Shire, and we proceed with scientific evidence as the key, and scientific evidence tells us that trees are critical for not only biodiversity, but also for human health, for function, for cooling, for climate resilience, for unbelievable numbers of reasons why trees hold value, then surely council, which is one of the leading decision makers and, provides education and provides ways of being, through action, we demonstrate what's important. Surely the education is the most significant thing that we can do alongside, the actions that we take to demonstrate what we believe. So retaining trees, while someone says, I have a problem with this tree, we can give them 100 reasons why actually that tree is critically important. And I think council could do amazing things in terms of reaching out to community, educating people, enabling a richer understanding, and going forward by example.
Thank you.
The education thing's interesting. It was brought up by a couple of our officers in briefings that there should be an education part that goes along with this in communication, education. How would you see that rolling out? Because in my mind, it's sort of, you can go out to schools, but that's got a drag of, 10 or 15 years before those people are doing too much with it. How would you see that? It's a fairly nebulous sort of concept. How would you see that education rolling out?
Firstly, internally to council. So everybody who works in Nillumbik Council, I think, should have a basic understanding of ecological function and the importance of trees. And that's anybody who works in council, not just the environmental team. That should be fundamental. And in terms of public education, the opportunities are enormous, whether it's through creative projects, whether it's through the... what's that?
The opportunities are, the budgets are.
I guess it has to come to innovation. And, also, if we are prioritising these things, then the budgets need to reflect that. And so we can't say this is one of the most important things in council, but we're not going to give it money. We need to prioritise. And if there's a pushback, there is an explanation for it. We have the greatest research to demonstrate why these things are important. And countless councils around the country and overseas are retaining trees, planting trees, doing whatever they could. If they had Nillumbik's opportunity, they would be thrilled. But we seem to be not so happy. And so it's a mind shift that needs to occur if we're going to achieve the, green wedge gold standard. And I think the opportunities for education, while, even if we're just waiting for the next term to get money for it, in the meantime, there are countless people, friends groups, educational opportunities, even in the quarterly newsletter, advertising, talking about, bringing about the love of trees. I'd be happy to have a chat with you about all the various ideas.
Thanks, Vicky. That's great.
Thank you very much, Vicky. The next person registered to speak is Elizabeth Doig.
Good evening, everyone. Well, that's a hard act to follow, but never mind, I shall push forward. So thank you for the opportunity to respond to the draft Nillumbik Tree Protection and Management Policy. The Council is to be commended for developing a policy to protect trees in the Shire. The Shire of Nillumbik has a high percentage of Indigenous canopy trees, averaging around 39% canopy cover across the Shire. This characteristic is a distinctive feature of the Shire, attracting many people to choose Nillumbik as their place of residence and underpinning important council strategies, such as the urban tree canopy strategy and the neighbourhood character strategy. However, in spite of possessing a high percentage of tree canopy cover, Nillumbik is losing trees at the rate of greater than 1% per year. So not all of this loss is happening on council land, of course, but nevertheless it's a trend in the wrong direction if we want to remain the Green Wedge Shire. The significance of trees, particularly mature Indigenous trees in urban and peri-urban environments, cannot be overestimated. The list of benefits to humans and wildlife is vast, including irreplaceable habitat value of hollow-bearing trees, living and dead, for arboreal mammals, birds and insects, food source for birds, mammals, insects, fungi, mosses and lichens, and supporter of vast underground mycorrhizal networks, as well as urban heat island mitigation effect to counteract increasing extreme heat impacts from accelerating climate change, particularly cooling benefits through shade and evapotranspiration. Erosion prevention as well, soil moisture retention and water filtration benefits, carbon sequestration, of course, aesthetic value, and a whole raft of positive human, physical and mental health benefits. The draft policy recognises the need to avoid unnecessary tree removal and acknowledges the importance of biodiversity. However, the overall focus of the policy is on tree risk management rather than on tree protection. The message is trees are nice to have, but not if they get in the way of human activities. While all trees are important, mature Indigenous trees are particularly so. In view of the immeasurable ecological services and services to humanity that a mature Indigenous tree provides, the emphasis needs to be on preserving and protecting such trees as a default, with ecological considerations predominating. These considerations need to be embedded within every aspect of the tree policy. The loss of large old trees is one of the greatest threats to biodiversity in our region, which cannot be reversed by replanting. A seedling, even 1,000 seedlings, cannot replace a mature tree in any meaningful time span. And we need to be doing whatever we possibly can to avoid ecosystem collapse. Just yesterday, I heard of 3 examples of catastrophic collapse of wildlife populations: cuttlefish in Spencer Gulf, elephant seals on Heard Island, pelican chicks in the Menindee Lakes.
Wrapping up when you can, Elizabeth.
So I just wanted to say we require an ecological assessment before removal or pruning of any Indigenous tree over 40 centimetres diameter at breast height.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll just check in with the councillors if anyone has a question for us, Elizabeth.
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Demerick?
Elizabeth, one of the issues, we're having global warming that's coming faster than perhaps our trees can adapt to. I was talking to a very wise person today, and they were talking about the yellow box are dying off because of the change in climate and that sort of thing. So if a lot of our, particularly our urban things are yellow box, how do you sort of see that playing out, that we might need to be changing tree species perhaps quicker than
It is
it'll
a
change
concern,
itself?
John, it absolutely is. But trees will be protected if they are in good health. I mean, the sicker a tree is, the less resilient it is to the impacts of climate change or to insect attack or anything else that might impact the health of a tree. So aiming to keep trees as healthy as possible and to keep the understory as healthy as possible and everything that influences the health of a tree should be the paramount aim of us in the Shire. I believe we should aim to keep our Indigenous trees as healthy as we possibly can, because they are the best trees suited for this environment to provide food for our wildlife, to food for the pollinators, all of the ecosystems that are in place in this Shire. They're designed to live here. Climate change will have an impact, but the healthier our trees are, the more resilient they will be to the impacts of climate change.
And so that includes understory and that sort of thing as well.
Absolutely.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our third and final speaker this evening is Sue Dyatt on behalf of the Eltham Community Action Group. Welcome.
I've got 3 points to make. Thank you for listening in advance. Firstly, Eltham Community Action Group is pleased that Council has put forward this draft for public consultation. As Secretary, I did eventually gain far more knowledge than before, but it was heavy going. I thought it was just me having difficulties comprehending the content and construction of the document until I realised that it was probably a cut and paste document. Ameliorating the inherent problems with that process takes time. I was delighted when I read a similar number of comments from other submitters in the 87-page attachment with their responses. A number called for a summary document or a plain English version, as well as this more bureaucratic version. Any public document should depend on who your readers are: residents, subcontractors, in-house staff use. However, in this case, council did ask residents to comment. Second point, over the years, you're not the only Nillumbik council where I have made the same or similar comments wearing my ECAG hat. Thankfully, the draft talks about tree replacement. Tree replacement needs a budget line. And how can you make a sensible allocation to replace trees unless you know how many trees need replacing? Council itself removes trees, and you would like to think the tally is now kept of how many and where and what species. But does it? I believe moves maybe are in hand finally to do this, or am I just being hopeful? Council is also responsible for allowing trees to be removed by developers. And I'm pretty sure that this obvious source of information is not being collated, despite it being brought to the attention of other versions of councils and council staff. Surely it is not impossible to collect this information in the planning application process. Combining the developer's removal of trees and the removal of trees by council would at least give some sort of validity to a budget line for tree replacement, and ideally of where replacements are needed. ECAD realises that this process cannot be totally accurate because of illegal clearing or clearing before applications are made, but it would be a start. And finally, ECAD is delighted to read that Council is planning on having a proactive approach to assessing and managing the health of trees. As humans, we realise that preventative health measures are far more beneficial to longer life.
Finishing up when you can. Thank you.
This document hopefully ensures that trees are cared for as community and therefore council assets with an environmental, ecological and economic importance rather than being just part of a generic landscape.
Thank you, Sue. Do any councillors have a question for Sue?
Sue, I take it from your first point that an education program would be something that you would consider important in this as well?
Absolutely. The idea of using Nillumbik News is about the only documentation that goes out to, theoretically, every household. You can't guarantee who reads it, but we have no newspaper any longer. But it would have to be going where the people are, and that might be the pubs and the hotels and posters up there. Or sporting groups. You really need to have a properly thought out communication process of how valuable a tree is, not just to our health, but as the two speakers before have said, to the whole environment. We all belong. It's interdependent, and we've got to point that out to people.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank
Stunned
you,
silence,
Sue.
everyone
Yeah.
wants.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, do I have a mover for this motion?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Joiner.
I will will move the motion as per the papers. Thanks.
Fantastic. And a seconder? Councillor Cope? Councillor Joyner, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I'd just like to thank the speakers that came in tonight to share your perspective. I understand you're all very passionate about this topic, and that is commendable. I'm pretty proud of this policy. I do think, you know, we are in the position where we need to balance public safety with environmental and biodiversity, always at the forefront. So I feel like that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to avoid and minimise tree removal. And I believe this policy has tree removal as a last resort, where retention and mitigation measures considered first wherever possible. So I, yes, would like to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak, Councillor Cope?
May I please? I'd like to note that in the discussion of this paper, bring it to us, item 7 below is the summary of a participate in Nillumbik online survey. And of question 7B, 95% of all the replies was the wildlife habitat is most important. And that's why we're striving to improve the tree canopy and the tree management and the improvement of it in our area, in our green wedge. So thank you, contributors tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Look, I wasn't going to speak because I spoke quite at length last time this one came to council, the last council meeting. But just a couple of examples, and I won't go through them all, but a couple of important examples that highlighted the need for this policy. And it's, you know, it is a new policy. It's something we haven't happened before, but I personally, over a number of years, became quite disappointed and disillusioned with council officers' direction in terms of not properly protecting trees. And I think I saw that very vividly at the start of this council term outside the Diamond Creek Primary School, where a whole street of trees, native trees, were removed because we wanted to put a pedestrian crossing in. And the pedestrian crossing didn't involve the whole street, but you know, there was a call that we needed to replace the curb and channel along the whole street. And some of these trees, even where the curb and channel wasn't being removed, presented a trip hazard. So, you know, of course, I didn't have any say in the planning around, you know, removing of these trees, and found out about the same time, the very same day that the residents of the street found out about it. The people that were consulted, of course, was the primary school, but nobody across the road living in the houses. So that was 5 significant trees that I thought, oh, you know, I've seen this sort of thing go on in the past. I hope it doesn't continue, and certainly made a lot of noise about it at the time. The next instance was probably the Diamond Creek outdoor pool, where works were being done there, where there were tree protections put in place in terms of applying for a planning permit, but at the time there wasn't the tree protection zone put around the significant trees, and one of them, the backhoe came through and ripped through the roots and destroyed that very, very large and significant tree. So that was also outrageous. That was again on council land. You know, very important tree in the activity centre of Diamond Creek, lost through the actions of one of council's contractors. And probably more recently, there was an experience that the body corporate for Diamond Creek Plaza had about 3 or 4 years ago, where they applied to council for a permit to remove substantial trees on their land at Diamond Creek Plaza because the trees were doing damage to their infrastructure, their car park. The roots were uplifting some of the bitumen. And the permit fees were paid. They weren't cheap, but it was refused. You know, they weren't allowed to remove the tree because the tree was significant to the area. What happened a couple of years later, of course, was one of our council staff who was inspecting footpaths noticed that there was a tree that was damaging the footpath. So wrote to the body corporate and suggested to them that they need to apply for a permit to remove that very tree. You know, that they'd previously applied for a permit and was refused on the basis that it was a substantial tree and it needed to be protected. So this policy is for council staff as much as for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Demerick.
Thanks, Chair. It's clear that from the amount of submissions and from the submitters that this is an important issue for the Nillumbik community, and it's an ongoing thing. It has been important to the Shire of Nillumbik since its inception some 30 years ago. And thank the submitters for coming out tonight and putting their views forward. It's also clear that we probably do need to polish the document a little bit, make sure it's funded, and attach an education part to it. So it's one thing having a document, it's another thing getting it out to people and making sure that they are aware of it. And so whether that education is part of onboarding for outside entities that are contracting for the state government, whether it's for our own contractors, our own teams, or going out to the general public, I think that needs to be fairly broad ranging, and we need to make sure that that is part of this document to make it really have some teeth and really work. And I think the criticism that doesn't have enough teeth, but we don't need teeth if we're all heading in the same direction and agree on it. And I think that's part of the education process and coming to some common ground. I'd also like to thank Heath Gillett, Lockie Capel and David Keep for their work on it, because it's easy to sit back and criticise sort of someone having a go at doing something new and an individual, but they've got us a document here that we can all have a look at. We can, move it around, but I think it's a very strong document. As I say, if it's properly supported, I think it will help Nillumbik into the future and keep us world-class in our protection of trees and environment, which, as Vicky pointed out, it is not a bad thing to aim for. As I said, I always aim that we'd be the second most livable city in the world, so we'll keep doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demerick. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, and thanks to the submitters for showing up and I think showing out tonight. Also the Occasional Care Centre in Diamond Creek, who provided a number of really wonderful illustrations for us to consider. Look, it seems to me that when you value assets, you're more likely to preserve them. And I think fundamentally what the policy tries to do is, part of it is having the amenity tree valuation framework. So, and it says so in point 16, to strengthen incentives for tree preservation. You will strengthen incentives for preservation if you can value the asset correctly. So I think where philosophically the policy is going is in the correct direction. So in that sense, we've got an ambitious timeline, I would have to say, to bring this back maybe by the end of September with some changes that have, responding to the submissions that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? No. I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. We have no supplementary and urgent business this evening, nor do we have any confidential reports, so we will close this meeting. Thank you for everyone who concludes our meeting for the night, and I declare this meeting closed at 7:33, or on our clock 7:35. Thank you.